people, I'd like to let people know that many of us in The Hague in 15 for the centennial, and in the Ghana Congress in 2018, many of us were from the US in particular were at various levels of being disappointed and distraught at not seeing very much about environment, very little in 2015, much more in 2018. And the fact that the theme of this year's Congress includes environment in its title, I think shows how much we have progressed in a quantum way toward focus on environment that is largely due to the feedback that has come from our section and others around the world.
I do want to emphasize, or not emphasize, but acknowledge that the US did submit quite a bit of content for the program. There was a diligent effort by a committee of people who had expressed interest, and unfortunately, none of our input was included.
Well, on that, although you can certainly feel the US influence on the environmental stuff from ongoing efforts.
Right, and that was from years past.
And in the last 3 years, yeah.
And I think we'll be talking about that more as we talk about the presentations. I just want to give people a heads up after we talk about, sorry, I'm trying to keep my thoughts in order. After we talk about the program, we'll be talking about the candidates who are running for the international board. Then we'll be talking about the Constitution and bylaws amendments, and then we'll talk about the presentations. Okay, so did you want to add more now, Nancy?
Yes, I would just like to add that I just want to list the topics that are part of what is described on page 23 as our concept of permanent peace is a world defined by, and I just want to read these: free from violence, universal demilitarization, nuclear-free, universal human rights, gender justice, just inclusive economic systems, decolonized and anti-racist, and environmental justice and sustainability. That this will help lead to a permanent peace built on foundations of freedom, justice, nonviolence, human rights, and equity. So I think you can appreciate how our work in this section through our issue committees really do work on many topics that relate to this concept of permanent peace, and what topics international would be working on that we at the national level and our branch level can amplify. I would also like to just go to one other page to show you, because I do myself feel more than maybe Darian does, that quite a bit of what we talked about has been included. This in particular, on page 29, we challenge systems and structures of oppression, organize against militarism and war, mobilize for human rights and gender justice, advocate for environmental justice and sustainability, and mobilize for social economic justice. I'm just emphasizing this because it shows a clear commitment in framing topics that we work on in regard to actually changing the system from, let's say, a war to a peace economy, to a oppressive systems that are inclusive and equitable, and based on systems of egalitarianism. So I just really want to have you get a bit excited in reading through this, and see, as I have, for example, as co-chair of Earth Democracy, how I might now rework some of our campaigns and projects and work on how to explain them and promote them better. So thank you for this chance, Darian.
Thank you. And I would like to give people just a couple, 3 minutes to ask questions if they have them.
Thank you, Nancy, very much. That was great.
I see a hand up for Joan Goddard, and just before Joan starts, Odile, did you want to also speak?
Yes, I was wondering, is there any specificity to those large kind of document, in those documents, those large ideas? Do we have any specific
Yes,
action?
yes, well, there is some. I would say that this is a rather large framework. For example, we challenge systems and structures of repression, and then these structures are listed: patriarchy, militarism, nationalism, capitalism, racism, and colonialism. So you can see that the challenge is to how do you take these larger frameworks and concepts and deconstruct them and show that by changing the system, what values and what structures are you wanting to use to replace these other systems that we're trying to unmask and take apart. So I think Barbara called me around about 4:30 and said, would I look at this document? So I really haven't digested it thoroughly. You've just gotten a sort of very quick read from me. I just encourage you to look at it yourself and be somewhat inspired, and then see how we can apply this to our work in this section and in our issue committees, and also who can we reach out to in other sections and regions to work with. So thank you.
Thank you. And we have quite a few questions now. So I think Robin Lloyd, you're next. Oh, excuse me, Joan Goddard, you were on the stack, but you've withdrawn. So Robin Lloyd.
Yeah, okay, so maybe it's scheduled to be discussed later in this program, but I have been somewhat dismayed with what the program is between the 2 weekends. In other words, I thought there would be a lot of interesting workshops, specific ones, and they all seem very general. About transformation, about feminism. There's nothing about Ukraine. There's nothing I could see actually about nuclear war. Someone tell me I'm wrong, but my little proposal collaborating with a section in Africa was rejected. And the reason why I'm concerned about this is that we're holding the Vermont WILPF gathering at the second half, and we will be watching as a group, we will be watching the Congress, and we will be scheduling our own things about NATO and Ukraine, and make them available to anyone. This is kind of a shotgun way of offering other subjects to people, to WILPF women around the world. So I'm hoping this will be discussed more at the end.
And possibly we may run out of time, and those are broad and sweeping questions and good ones. We obviously in the US section don't control what's on the program, that is the presentation program, or anyway, for the International Congress. But we will have more discussion after we get through the fundamental segments of the Congress. Okay, thank you, Robin. Cricket.
Joan's hand, before me, Joan's hand is back up.
I
Sorry, my battery went out and I had to get back on. I just wondered, Nancy, if you didn't, I was going to put it in the chat, but if you did not already say, and everybody else got, how to find or when we received, how we received what you were working with, the rest of us, the people who've registered, I'd appreciate it, but maybe you could put that in the chat if that's more effective or appropriate. Thank you.
I want to just try to address that. When you register for the Congress, you will have the opportunity to get oriented to the Canopy or Canopy, let's say Canopy program. The link that was previously put in the chat and which I will repost is a link to a training in the Canopy program, or looks like the link never made it. Ah, there it is. Yes. So I'll repost that. And that training will help orient you to where you can find things for the Congress. So the program is posted along with other Congress documents.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I missed the very beginning of the meeting and had that problem, and looking forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Cricket.
Okay, I have two things I want to bring up. One is that according to Janet, I was a little bit involved with the document that we submitted for our ideas for the program, but I was not at it when it was finished. So I'm probably not in a position to compare it to the outcome, the program that came out. But Janet was really disappointed and made the point that none of the group kinds of things that we had wanted to see in the program were there. And I noticed Regina's question here about that, and specifically about NATO. And I think the other things, what Robin was saying, also apply. And my other point, which is part of this, is that in my experience of US WILPF, we often, how to say this, many of the branches often do not get involved with the international program. There can be really strong program pieces, but the branches have so many other things that they're working on. And I really want to encourage people to do perhaps what Nancy said. I thought that was a good suggestion, that we take it as a framework to look at the work we're doing. And even if it's, and particularly because it sounds like this program is kind of general in some ways, to make sure that we use it. Because I think that's an important part of being a member of an international organization. That's a way that we can have more power and more influence. So let's try to do more of that this time.
Thank you, Cricket. Great. Regina Sneed.
Hello. A number of comments. I happened to participate in the meetings to draft the international program. Any member of WILPF could do that. And so I participated in 2 of them. I want to support what Cricket just said. If you realize that the sequence of events for this organization being an international organization is we have an international Congress, we adopt a 3-year program. They were supposed to then have a US section Congress the next year, following that. And then we're supposed to work on developing a US section program based on the international program. And that's how it's supposed to flow down to the branches. And we have gotten out of sequence, and our branches do a lot of work that really has nothing to do with the international WILPF. And we should really correct that in the future. So that's what I wanted to say about that. I want to quickly, if we can, get to the candidates. I have a list of them, and I want to know.
Excuse me, Regina, that is next on the agenda, but I want to finish questions.
Thank you. I need it to be next because I need to do something else, but I want to participate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joan, is your hand up with a new question or just
If I
a
can lower
leftover?
my hand.
Sorry, it's one of those leftovers. Beg your
Okay.
pardon.
So I'm going to screen share, if I'm lucky, the list of candidates. Now, there were some areas of confusion at the international level about this list, but as of now, these are believed to be the candidates. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing and reformat that so that it all fits on at one time. So my apologies. And this will just take a minute.
Has a new list been officially publicized?
My understanding is that there will not be a new list prior to the Congress.
So this list is an unofficial list that you have?
No, this is an official list. And okay, let me try to explain this to people. There were some difficulties in arriving at who should be qualified as a candidate. And that had to do with people who had applied to be candidates were expected to provide 6 basic components. And when I say basic, I mean pretty basic. A signed application, a description of their involvement in WILPF, some kind of curricula vitae or resume, and a couple of other things. I don't know them by heart. But they were 6 basic things that they were asked for. There was a call for candidates that listed those things. There were application forms. And at the point when there was a deadline for applications, the deadline was extended for another 3 weeks to make sure that people had the opportunity to submit the 6 basic things. So what I'm about to screen share is the list of candidates who did indeed accomplish that. And there are other candidates whose names had been raised by sections. You'll see nominated by, and nominated by refers to the sections that nominated these individuals. A section could nominate someone, but if that someone did not follow through in providing a signed application with whatever the other things were, then they were put into a different category of individuals who had not yet been qualified to be nominated. The nominating committee of international, but I'm not taking questions yet, but you can keep your hand up if you wish. The nominating committee has diligently done their job of reviewing the applications and the application material and discussed repeatedly how to address the concerns that had been raised. At this point, WILPF International has initiated some kind of investigation into the whole procedure. I don't believe that there are any accusations against the nominating committee. Indeed, the International Board affirmed that the nominating committee had done a good job. So I'm not knowledgeable as to what the nature of certain complaints is exactly, or how they're being investigated, or even when or under what circumstances the results of the investigation will be announced. But at this time, this is the information that's available. So I'm going to go over the information on this, and then I will call on people who have raised their hands. So first, you'll see that there's one position available for president, whereas for vice president, there are 2 positions, and then for treasurer, there's 1 position. These are the elected members of the International Board who are elected by the entire Congress, that is, by the delegates at the Congress. The International Board consists of these 4 positions plus regional representatives from each of the several regions. The US is in the Americas region, and the Americas region, like each of the regions, was asked to decide on a single nominee for their region prior to the Congress. And in our region, we had a meeting of presidents and other other section representatives, and picked one candidate to be our regional representative. However, it gets very complicated, and I will address that further when we get down to the vice president position. Now, each candidate can be nominated by at least one section or more than one section. So you'll notice, for example, that under vice president, out of the first 4 candidates, 3 of them were nominated by one section, and Beatrice Schultes, who's currently our region representative, was nominated by 5 sections. So there's no limit to how many sections may nominate someone. Then you also see what section each candidate is from. I should explain that the asterisks, which sometimes are after the name and sometimes before, that's my fault. Anyone with an asterisk is currently on the international board in various capacities. For example, Shireen and Sylvie are both regional or region representatives. Okay, so I did want to just explain the complications about vice president and the Americas region representative, and provide a little more information about the region representatives. Beatrice Schultes ran for vice president at the 2018 Congress, and she has been nominated again for vice president at this Congress. As you can see, she was nominated by the USA section. The board considered nominating her and decided to do so. We have been very pleased with the way she has served as a region representative. Here's where it gets complicated. Beatrice is running for vice president. If she does not get elected, the Americas region agreed that she should be our first choice for our regional representative. So if she gets elected to vice president, then there will need to be someone else to run for region representative. In this case, Janet Slaughter from the US section was endorsed by the region to run for region representative if Beatrice is elected to vice president. If Beatrice is not elected to vice president, then she'll be our candidate for region representative, and Janet Slaughter will be the alternate, duplicating the situation that is currently in place. I finally want to explain that it's kind of a curious system. The regions decide who they want to nominate for region representative, but it's at the Congress that the Congress delegates are asked to approve the selections of the regions. So the timing of all that is not clear to me. Presumably that, as happened in prior years, in 2018, the region representatives were one of the last things on the agenda to be approved. Okay, so now I will happily turn to questions, and I think I'll stop screen sharing. Well, I'll keep it up because maybe there are questions about the screen share. So Barbara Nielsen.
So I am a little disconcerted that the last official document that was very confusing, but nonetheless official, has been stripped of the howevers that were there, that without questions answered, as far as I know, those questions were not answered, and they're still up in the air about whether Hanan Awad and Melissa Torres will be left on the list as viable candidates, or with their candidacy changed from questionable to viable. And I don't quite understand why you seem to, I think it's you, seem to have taken it upon yourself, Darian, to strip them off this list as if some decision has been reached by the IB, since you tell me that no decision has been reached by the IB.
I don't know what the IB has decided. I do know that they have initiated this investigation and there is no result from the investigation yet, and that the nominating committee has backed up their initial list of nominations, which is what I present. And I don't know when or if we will get further information in time for voting. So it seemed most sensible to have us focus on the candidates who are the currently confirmed candidates.
I mean, since there are only 4 of us who are voting, eligible to vote on it, and we've talked about this a lot, I guess I just would have liked the possibility of the other 2 names to have been circulated to the other people from the section who have been interested in this. That's all. You know, Melissa Torres has served us very well as an international board representative under the old system, and she has been international vice president since 2018 under the existing system, and has been nominated again by other sections to serve in that capacity again. And of course, Hanan Awad, many of us know, has been perennially recommended for service as vice president, and kind of blackballed by the process from time to time since. So those were the 2 names that were up in the air.
Okay,
Um,
I will say that the Constitution specifies that candidates for international office shall have been members of WILPF for 3 years. Now, it's not clear to me, because I haven't read over the Constitution in the last 24 hours, whether that's the most recent 3 years or 3 years in general. However, Melissa Torres has not been a member of WILPF for the last 3 years. She lapsed her membership for 2 years, even while she continued to serve on the international board.
Well, she lapsed her US membership. I do not know that she did not take up an international membership, which she could have been allowed to do.
Actually, the specifications for international membership require that one be a member of a national section if one exists. There's no provision for international membership if you're in a section that is a member.
Well, I'll tell you, that doesn't take into account differences of opinion about how people were treated within their section, which is sort of another case. But
Okay, well, so
yeah,
I want to move on to Regina.
sure.
Sneed? Sneed. Me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I just want to point out that the list I just got off the Canopy site includes the other candidates that you did not include here. So I don't think this list is official. It appears that the other candidates are still potentially, could be, approved for election at the Congress when the nominating committee meets or something, but their names are still on the website. And what I want to know is if you guys have discussed who you're going to vote for, why don't you share who those people are, or let us have an opportunity to find out about these candidates and who they are, the ones on your list.
Okay, we'll get to that after questions. Barbara, do you want me to take down your hand or can you do that?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, Robin?
Yeah, just curious, Darian, you said you referred to the investigation. I'm just not aware of what the investigation is that you're talking about.
I am not aware of anything beyond that there were some kinds of complaints related to who was qualified to be a candidate, and those complaints, in response to them, the Secretariat has initiated an investigation, and that's about everything I know about that.
Okay.
There is a person who is the investigator. I don't remember her name. Cricket.
And, okay, when we discussed the candidates, the delegation and then Janet and myself, we did not state individual, I don't get to vote, but the voting members did not say for whom they were planning to vote. Each of our 4 voting representatives will make that choice. They probably will talk to each other about it, but it is not something that was announced last night. I think people are probably still waiting to see the videos and perhaps other information, perhaps the applications. I don't know what's going to be visible to our delegates, but it's not as if they're putting lawn signs up. And it's very possible they'll never say. It's an odd, well, I think when you're raising a card, I think if we did it with a card, or do we do it on paper? I don't remember, to be very honest. But the point is that what we talked about last night were things that we knew about these individuals, which frankly wasn't very much, to be honest, and what their strengths might be, why they might make a good vice president or president or treasurer. If any of you know these individuals and know something important about them, and I sort of thought from your question originally, Regina, who you wanted to support, that you might want to be talking to our delegates and saying, of these, let's say these vice presidents, this is the person whom I would like to see supported for this reason. And I believe we're allowed to do that. So if you have a strong feeling and you know who our delegates are, you can do that. Other than that, believe me, this process has not, let me say this, the committee has worked really, really hard to do a good job and to get information and to encourage people to complete their applications and things like that. I don't hold them responsible at all. Who knows why paperwork doesn't get turned in? As a person who sometimes doesn't complete paperwork, I know why mine doesn't get turned in, but I have no idea why other people didn't complete the applications. And I think we should just let it go. There were other people who may have more information to share that I don't have.
Thank you, Cricket. And Odile.
Well, I wanted to let people know that some member of the Middle East Committee, including myself, sent a letter of protest to Madeleine Rees concerning Anna Wad, and that, as Barbara Nielsen said, she's a perennial. She's been trying to have an international position for a long time. And we feel that she's culturally not appreciated to the fullest that she should be. And that they've always kind of discarded her or put her aside. And so we sent a letter of protest. And we also wanted on the Congress to be able to have a discussion regarding the Middle East, one state or two states. And we feel that it's important for our policy at this point to come up or to review our position or to come up with a new position regarding it. Because the two states is not happening anymore. And Israel has been taking more and more land, and it's not a possibility, it's not a contiguous possibility to have a Palestinian state anymore. So anyway, so we feel that it was kind of urgent for our International Congress to have this discussion.
Thank you. Regina, I see your hand up, but I want to
Yes.
call on people who have not yet spoken.
Just a point of information,
Okay,
the 10-page application for each one of these candidates is on the Canopy website. So I want to know if our delegates have read all that information because the Congress starts in 2 days.
yeah. The elections for the candidates are not expected to be before the second weekend.
Well, I
So,
understand that.
and we have been working on the program, the Constitution and bylaws, the candidates we have discussed at length, but we have only referred to the information. So we're doing what we can.
Okay, I just want to make sure it didn't sound like people knew that they were there.
Yep. Jennifer Bailey.
Gina, you
Thank
want to
you.
lower your hand?
Thank you. I wanted to ask a quick question. How does one get in touch with Hanan?
I'm sorry, with whom?
Is it spelled Hanan?
Hanan.
Hanan.
You can
And
try.
then two ends.
Yeah.
Two,
I suggest, Jennifer, that you do a private chat to Odile with that question, and she may be able to give you an answer.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So I do want to make sure, and I'll just lower your hand. Thank you. I do want to make
Also,
sure that
look,
we,
excuse me, Jerry.
excuse me just a minute. I want to make sure we have a chance to talk about the Constitution and bylaws and the presentations, and then we'll be able to come back to additional discussion after we address those. But the point has been raised about presentations being more limited than anticipated, and I think the US section has some excellent presentations coming up. So we will get back to candidates. I have to say that in my experience, most people in the US are not extremely aware of the candidates who are running for international offices, and that's nothing against them, but we have limited access to that information. So Regina is quite right that reading the applications is one way to get information about the candidates. I also think that the countries that nominate them give you some kinds of information, and the countries they are from, though that's not always as helpful as it might seem. One of the things about being a delegate is we do try to give some preference to people who have been to an international congress because they may have had more opportunity to find out about or even seen in meetings people who end up being candidates. But it's nothing easy voting for the candidates because really we have limited knowledge of them. If you've ever looked at applications from job applicants, you probably know that there's a world of difference between an application and the individual, and it can be positive difference and it can be negative difference. So it's challenging. People, we will talk about this more, but for now, I want to move on to the Constitution and bylaws. And this is not something I'm going to go into in detail because as technical as international board members is, the Constitution and bylaws is that much more so. So I'll give a summary here and possibly people can ask particular questions. In 2018, at the International Congress in Ghana, the Congress adopted a brand new constitution, and there were some challenges with that constitution. Oh, just before I get to this, I apologize. I wanted to say we have, as the US section, 4 delegates, and that's a maximum, well, I believe that's the highest number of delegates of any section. Other sections may also have 4 delegates. To have 5 delegates, you have to have over 1,500 members. And as far as I know, no section has over 1,500 members. In the past, in Ghana, we did have 5 delegates. Also, I do not know how many delegates there will be at the Congress. I don't know how many sections will be actually present, and I have no idea as to how many delegates each section qualifies for. So that was a pertinent question that came up. And other questions I'll be able to get to after talking for a bit. So 2018, new constitution and bylaws. The US section, a major aspect of the new constitution and bylaws were that we got rid of the former structure of the International Board. Formerly, the International Board consisted of one representative from each section as well as the officers. The 2018 Constitution changed that dramatically to the international officers plus one representative from each region. The United States, as I've mentioned, is in the Americas region, which includes all of North America, Central America, and South America. Mexico, US, Argentina, Bolivia is no longer a section, Costa Rica, Argentina, I think I may have said that. So there are a handful of sections in the Americas region. So the new Constitution is now getting some amendments to try to patch up a few oversights from the old Constitution, but also to try to create a more effective structure in some ways. There are three major changes that come to mind when I review for myself the new Constitution and bylaws. And I'll just say the Constitution and bylaws are one kind of continuous document. To amend either part of it takes a 2/3 vote of the International Congress. And I have to say, as someone who has studied these documents for a long time, it's not clear to me why something ends up in the Constitution or in the bylaws. It's a little mysterious. In any case, a new structure created under the new Constitution is the Advisory Board. The Advisory Board in some ways resembles the old International Board. Namely, there will be one representative from each section. They will meet, I assume, definitely virtually twice a year. At those meetings, the IB members are expected to be present, and the Advisory Board will talk about international and program and issues and offer advisory comments to the International Board, the members present, and to the board itself. So it does not have any power particularly, but it is an opportunity for the sections to be more heard. Because right now, as one section in an entire region, a section might be more overlooked. Another major change is previously the treasurer was responsible for all kinds of treasurer kinds of things. And this was problematic because the treasurer currently was not able to get quite a bit of financial information from the secretariat. Under the new Constitution, there's, I believe it's called the Audit Committee or the Auditing Committee. It's not really what I think of as auditing, but it is a committee that will be reviewing the financial transactions and income and all kinds of things that a treasurer would otherwise do. And then the treasurer approves the reports from the auditing committee. So it's really taking a lot of the burden off of the treasurer, which it was a substantial burden and probably an obstacle to getting people to run to be treasurer. I know that there was quite a problem in 2018 finding someone willing to run for treasurer. So that's a second major change. A third change is a very interesting situation. The International Board, as I've mentioned, has officers and regional representatives. The current International Board, 4 or 5 of the members of that board are being paid one way or another by the International Secretariat. They might have a contract to do something. I don't know any of the details. I just know that they are being remunerated in some way. As I hope would be obvious to most people, this raises concerns about conflicts of interest. The Secretariat, when I use that word, I'm talking primarily about the Secretary General, Madeleine Rees, and also about all the staff of the International Secretariat who work under the supervision of Madeleine Rees. So the International WILPF has a multi-million-dollar budget. We're talking about quite a few staff and a lot of funding. It's a very responsible position, being the Secretary General. It's only natural that the Secretary General should have opinions about what International WILPF should do and what the International Board should do. The question arises that when the Secretariat has an opinion about a matter coming before the International Board, will those International Board members who are being paid in some capacity by the Secretariat be influenced to support the opinions of the Secretariat? So that's what is at the crux of two alternative amendments to the International Constitution. One amendment flatly says you cannot be on the International Board if you are receiving any remuneration from the Secretariat. That's option one. Option two says if you're receiving remuneration, you have to follow through in these several ways, such as telling everybody that, okay, I'm getting paid, which was not known to people before. Also, you have to sign a conflict of interest statement, and you're to recuse yourself on voting matters that are somehow related to you or the situation. So those are the two options that are significant. There are quite a few other amendments. I'll just mention one other that's interesting is conflict has always been something that WILPF International has been concerned about, but we have traditionally talked about armed conflict. And now the proposed amendments would extend this to conflict and armed conflict, referring to, well, frankly, what we see going on in social media these days could be considered a form of conflict. So first, I'll ask if there are those who are knowledgeable about the new Constitution who want to add something to what I have described. But we want to limit how much time we spend on this, of course. Regina.
I only have a question. I
Yes.
think one of the amendments has to do with the location of where the Secretary General could be located. And it looks like she's moved to New York, or she's in New York now anyway. So it seems like she wants to be stationed in New York now. And that bylaw would allow her to be living there. I think she would, when she initially started working 10 years ago, she was living in South Africa.
No, she was living in Geneva and she moved to South Africa much later.
Yeah, so there was that issue going on. So it looks like she's interested in living in New York now.
But she has been since COVID.
Yes, right. But to make that legitimate.
Yeah.
That's it.
And a question was raised, we live in a global world connected by internet, etc. Does it really matter where the Secretary General lives? And I don't know that it stipulates that the Secretary General must be located where the offices are, but it does add to the listing of offices New York. And now I'm going to have to double check that. Thank you.
I
So-
have a question. How is the International Secretariat? Is she re-elected? How is she nominated to that position?
She is very comparable to an executive director and almost always executive directors are hired by the boards with whom they work. And I know that the international board hires Madeline Reese. I don't know whether it's every year, every 5 years, every 10 years, but they're the decision makers.
There would be an employment contract that would show the terms and conditions, just as staff reporting to her have employment contracts and consultants have consulting contracts.
Thank you. And Regina Bertram, good to see you, Regina.
Yes, I don't want to minimize that, this gloss over this constitutional changes, because there is a lot of international concern over this. This fundamentally changes WILF. It fundamentally changes that the sections have some authority and voice and are consulted. And I could not find out what was actually being proposed. I don't see anything in writing about the amendments, but I know there is a great deal of concern. And we should realize that if you look at the website, where is the money coming from? And who is being paid? And what are the obligations? And how has WILF changed in the strength of its voice? Even Katia Contratini in her book says that WILF is now mainstream. So let's have a look and take this seriously. I don't think we can just flippantly say that they have made proposals that should just get a yes. I don't see how this Congress is actually having a fundamental discussion as I have known WILF in my past. That's all I want to say. I think it's very serious about the future of the organization. And I think you look where the money's coming from, where's the strength of our voice, and how are we paying so many people?
Just
Where
to,
is the money coming from?
excuse me, just to ask you a clarifying question, Regina. When you say this fundamentally changes WILF, the change to region representation on the international board was made in 2018, and that ended the sections having direct representation. So what's happening now is to add an advisory board. What is the this that fundamentally changes WILF that you're referring to?
Actually, historically, WILF did have regional representation, but this was restored, but the sections are still the fundamental base of the organization. That's why the organization exists. So if you remove our voice and just say we're advisory, what's the point? What's the point?
And I'm not disagreeing with you. This is a fundamental reason why the US section objected to the 2018 constitutional shift to regions. However, the advisory board does not replace any existing structure. It's something new. The sections at this time do not have a direct voice.
Oh, wait, because we've lost it. This Congress is our direct voice. This Congress is supposed to be our direct voice. That's in our Constitution now. So that we had regional representatives, that didn't remove the section voice. It just made another structure in between,
Right.
another level. And it had another level of financing, another level of personnel, another level that you had to communicate with. So if we now say, well, the sections are just advisory, well, who cares? What the hell? I mean, why are we even talking about this then? Because we don't have a voice.
Thank you. Yes.
I have a
Okay.
question about that. I'd like to be added to stack, please.
And
Okay.
my hand is up.
Right. So Dee, you'll be right after Barbara.
Regina, I hear your concern about the voice of the sections. I remember very, very well the endless hours that we had leading up to the 2015 Congress when the manifesto was being drafted, and the French questions were being drafted, and the Dutch questions were being drafted. And there had been a move at that time to try to get the regionalization of the board to the floor of the Congress. And I remember the first sort of pre-meeting in a room off the side of the large lecture hall in the UN buildings in The Hague, where a couple of the people from Europe sat us down and said, this regionalization isn't gonna happen. Nobody wanted it, and except a small number of people. And that's in fact what happened. But I also remember talking with a lot of people over the next 3 years, and also talking with Melissa Torres, who was our international board representative during those 3 years, and listening to Melissa talk about the difficulties that members were having from, say, the African sections and some of the other newer sections, where getting to frequent board meetings that were held at odd hours of the night often, where they didn't have internet service locally, nobody was helping them get internet service. It was an increasingly negative experience for a lot of sections who were not, in fact, very excited about participating on the international board anyway. They were more concerned about what the status being a member of WILPF gave them in their local struggles in their countries, and the legitimacy that they were given because they were a member of WILPF International, which of course, as we know, has had consultative status at the UN since 1948, and still holds that, and that the leverage that they had for their local legitimacy was a large part of the value of their being WILPF members. So I remember going into the Ghana Congress, where we were one of the few countries that still insisted that the regional representation would be horrible. And I remember several of our voting delegates, I was not a voting delegate that year, almost crying in despair that the United States would not have its voice heard at the international board because we would not be sitting directly at the table. And not very many countries were very sympathetic. We really did sound like the ugly American. And we sounded further like it after we submitted anonymous half sheets on everybody's chairs one morning, anonymously trying to urge everybody to vote out regions. And of course, the regions didn't fail, they passed. But that doesn't mean that the new board structure is the issue. I don't get a sense that in all of the regions, the individual countries are being heard. I don't get a sense in the Americas that the representatives for the America section are necessarily as enthusiastically representing the other 5 countries beyond Costa Rica and the US. I could be wrong, but that's the sense that I have. And so I just wonder if maybe the sections need to stand up to make sure that sections are getting heard. And I don't really mean us, I mean other sections. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Dee, and then Cricket, I'll call on you.
Hi, Darian. So could you explain a little bit more about the layout of the advisory board? Because my understanding is, since we have been moved into sections, an advisory board would probably be that voice, that missing voice. Members who are elected to, represent the sections to the board. So can you detail? I thought it was something like 40 people that you had mentioned, but can you please explain that a little bit further?
I can explain it just a little bit further. The advisory board will have one member from each section. Since there are approximately 40 sections, that would be 40 members. And they would meet. It's not really specified what they would talk about or do, except that they would talk about WILPF International and developments in the world and their ideas and opinions. And then they would be able to be heard by the international board members who are expected to be present at their meetings, which may or may not happen. And also, presumably, they could submit proposals to the international board based on things that they passed.
Thank you. So this would be more of a representative voice where there isn't one at present.
Correct. It
Okay,
would
thank
be
you.
one person, one section. Cricket. Cricket Doyle, please unmute.
Okay, there we go. I've been so caught up in this discussion that I've forgotten why I raised my hand. So I'm going to take it down.
Okay. So if it comes back to you, Nancy.
Yes, so when you read this document of the program 2022 to 2025, you'll see, I think, that the opportunity, as I see it, for building on any of the values and the topics that, or large systems that WILF is attempting to dismantle and change, et cetera, that if this advisory board is functioning as Dee was saying, not only is that a sort of a representative body, but it's a way, I think, that sections can see ways of working together when they share a concern across a wide geographic area, or they share a concern about what they're working on in their region, so that you can build from the grassroots up, from the local up to the state or country level, the national level, and then up to the international or global level. So I see it when I read this, when I skim this document, the program, I can see how, if to some degree international is trying to be more horizontal, more interconnected, more collaborative among members and sections, that then this advisory group, if they really think seriously about that as a real goal, could be effective. And maybe it's up to sections to let them know about what that might look like. So thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that somewhat. So are there further comments before we move on? And again, the Constitution and bylaws did go through 3 drafts as amendments were submitted, and then people objected to or supported the amendments and submitted more amendments. Again, unfortunately, the US section did submit a number of suggested amendments, and I think the only one that was finally adopted was the one that led to the 2 options about IB members who are being remunerated. Okay, and now I'm happy to move on to the presentations that are going to be made at the Congress. The presentations will all take place during the week, Monday through Friday. When I say during the week, Monday through Friday, that is in terms of Australia time, so it can come out a little differently. But the idea is that the business is done on the weekends and the presentations during the week. the Congress organizers requested submissions from all the sections in the world for the presentations that they wanted to offer. Then the presentations that were accepted, the presenters were allowed to pick a time within certain parameters that they wanted for their presentation. And this makes a lot of sense because if you're doing a presentation from the United States, for example, you don't want to be doing it at 2 a.m. local time, just if for no other reason you want your panelists and so forth to be awake. But this does mean that since we're dealing with worldwide presentations, some of these are liable to be at awkward times. I know that the weekend programs will all be recorded and available for viewing afterwards, and I imagine that the weekday presentations will be the same. I apologize for not having clear information. Unfortunately, I've had technical problems that I'm working with International about, and I have not been able to look at the Kanapi site for the last week. So I really don't know what is available on that site now. Okay, so presentations, I'd like to start with Cindy Peister, if you're still here, Cindy. Yes, you are.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm hi. Thank you very much, Darian. And it's just wonderful to be here with all of you. And I've really enjoyed this last bit of discussion. It gives me some insight. So I submitted, Nancy and I submitted together a program that would include a panel with individuals who ended up being from Norway and Afghanistan and Italy. And I'm going to open with a 20-minute slideshow that originally was intended to address the role of military emissions on climate. It's something I've been very passionate about for a number of years now. And I'm wondering if in this process, I think Robin mentioned that she felt that the overall feel of the presentations was somewhat bland in general. I'm wondering about that in terms of my own presentation or the presentation that Nancy and I are giving, because I was strongly encouraged to change it after it had been accepted. And fit in more with the asks that are foundational to WILPF. And I understand that, and they're all things that I feel strongly about myself, you know, ending wars, ending militarization, ending nuclear weapons, and calling for divestment of fossil fuels. I understand all those. It wasn't what I had intended to bring forth. I was leaning on changing how we as nations pressure our own militaries, especially here in the United States, where our Department of Defense is the world's largest institutional producer of greenhouse gas emissions. And I was feeling that we owed it to the other sections and the other individuals and countries around the world to let them know that we are trying to take that battle on. So I am going to include that. I'm going to work with it a little bit. I'm hoping that it'll be well accepted, but anyway, thank you for the opportunity, and I will try to do justice to WILPF. Thank you.
Thank you. Any quick questions about Cindy's program? Teresa?
Yes, I heard it was on July 22nd, but I did not hear the time. So could she please say when the workshop is?
You know, I know somebody was going to ask me that because I don't know the answer. Nancy, do you? What time is our presentation? You got unmute.
Yes, yes,
I've
yes.
been working hard on the content and ignored the timing. I'm
It's
sorry.
in the e-news.
Ugh.
It's in the e-news, in the updates, in the e-news, the July e-news that just came out today. Nancy submitted,
I can give that information if you'd like, very quickly.
sure, please.
I would
Um,
appreciate it, because there were lots of problems with the e-news this month.
There are 14 workshops listed on the Canopy site. And the descriptions are there.
And Nancy, are you able to give that information?
Yes, so it's on Friday, July 22nd, let me see, I'll tell you, it's 12 noon to 1:30 p.m. EDT, and therefore 9 to 10:30 a.m. PDT.
Thank you.
Yeah. But please go to the e-news and look under Earth Democracy, you know, the way they give you that title, and you'll see all three of the panels and good descriptions and the times given translated from European time to EDT and PDT. And I think they're correct in the way I translated the times.
Thank you. Any other
Stack.
questions?
Stack, did I hear someone say that the equity and inclusion workshop did not make it into the e-news?
I believe George said that. I have not read the whole e-news at this point, so I do not know. But I would like to move on. I will be calling on you for the equity and inclusion workshop in a few minutes.
I'm sorry, the equity inclusion workshop is not in the e-news. There are 3 environmental workshops listed.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next workshop presenter, Pat Hine. Are you still here, Pat? Looks like Pat may have had to leave.
Excuse me, Darian, just very
Yes.
quickly, could we have put out an addendum to that e-news so that
No, you can talk to me about that later. This is a bad time to talk to me about that now.
okay, well, I just want people to know that I will work on that then. I think
Okay.
that one should be covered. Okay,
Okay, as has just been mentioned by Regina Sneed, and thank you, Regina, all of the presentations are listed on the Canopy site, and anyone who's registered for the Congress can find out more about them there.
If you would like, I will read the titles and the days they're on. It will take a minute.
Well, when we're done with the presentations from US folks, that would be great. But I
Okay,
wanted to highlight.
Since Patricia Hines is not on, let me just say that the title of her presentation is Can Sanctions Ever Be Just, Let Alone Effective? A Feminist Perspective. This is on Wednesday, July 20, from 1 to 2:30 EDT, 10 to 11:30 PDT. I gave her a nice write-up in the e-news. And then I'd like to mention that the next one is Towards Environmental Peace and Justice, a Space for Learning and Exchange. This is kind of an interesting format, as there will be about 10 people giving what they call lightning talks of 3 to absolutely no more than 5 minutes. Then there are breakout rooms for people who want to go and learn more about the topics that were quickly presented, and then coming back to a broader discussion that's led by 4 people, including Beatrice Schultes, who we mentioned, and I don't remember the other 3. And I'm giving a lightning talk on PFAS forever chemicals, the health crisis and the ecological catastrophe. And
Nancy, is there
yes.
anything on the Middle East?
Pardon me?
Is there anything on the Middle East?
I don't know. I don't know.
Excuse me, I promised Regina Sneed that she would be able to read the full list of workshops in just a couple minutes when we're done with the US ones.
Yeah, so
There's
I'm
no
finished
US
with the Earth
workshop.
democracy ones.
Yeah. And I hope that everyone on this Zoom understands how pertinent it is to the US that someone in the US section is offering a presentation on sanctions, because we're number one in terms of applying sanctions against, I think it's over 80 countries in the world today, sanctions that can have devastating effects. Okay, Teresa, would you like to talk briefly about your presentation?
Well, I'd like to take as much time as Nancy took with her presentations, if we can be fair about it.
Actually, Nancy was speaking about two presentations, one of which was not hers.
Well, since mine got left out of the e-news as well, and I am very happy that so much support has been given by the International Secretariat. We had a meeting on June 24th to talk about the equity and inclusion section by section workshop. What the International Secretariat says is there's no other workshop that really focuses in on the anti-racism efforts that are being undertaken at the international level. And what we agreed is that Layla Aladat, who is Syrian, and she's the Deputy Secretary General, she will be the facilitator for the workshop that George and I are presenting on. And it is really significant that the International Secretariat has thoroughly embraced the Black Liberation Caucus and the work that we're doing. So our workshop will lay out the 3-year strategy of the Black Liberation Caucus to bring in 100 members per year for this year, next year, and 2024, increasing the membership of the US section by 300 members is the goal. And we will explain all of this in terms of the work of members who have historically been excluded from the leadership of WILPF, including its committees, as well as its national board, and how things are changing. I think there was some concern from the International Secretariat that various issues of treatment would be brought up. I think Melissa Torres has thoroughly told of her experience. And what I want to focus on is what we're doing about it. So what the Black Liberation Caucus is doing about it. And I will mention the formation of the European Descent Allies Caucus so that people can have somewhat of a model for how certain sections, particularly in Europe, can deal with some of the issues I've heard about migrants, particularly from Africa, coming into the European sections in the UK and other places, and how they're treated. But the workshop will start with a 7-minute video on colonialism, which will highlight the transatlantic slave trade and all of the countries that were involved. We had originally asked Spain, the UK, to participate on the panel. Well, Spain declined, but I think there will be 2 representatives on the panel from the UK, Lamona from India, and possibly Marie Claire Ferre from the DRC originally, who are both in the UK now. but it seems like there's been some hard difficulties trying to pull that together. But George and I will be the presenters from the U.S. section. So it'll be a panel which looks like all women of color. And it starts at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So that will be 1 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesday, July 20th. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. Sorry. Thank you, Teresa. I'm looking at Regina Sneed, who's right above your picture on my computer. So are there questions folks want to ask Teresa about her presentation?
I have a question.
Yes.
What elements of the BIPOC communities will be included? That is, in addition to Black, Hispanic, Latinx, Asian, and Indigenous populations, which we should also pay attention to. And second, branches are doing their own efforts, and I want to be sure that we hear from the separate branches who are trying to do work themselves in their current status. Thanks.
Well, I believe that's Judy Adams speaking, is it not?
Yes.
Well, Judy, this is the WILPF International Congress. So we'll be focusing in on all of the 50 sections. As a matter of fact, Layla thought that the workshop would be so well attended that we might have some breakout groups. But at the end, we're going to be talking about next steps from the international perspective. What needs to happen in the U.S. section is the work that the Black Liberation Caucus is doing, which now has added a European Descent Allies Caucus. And I think that's something we can talk about exclusively in the U.S. section. But the WILPF International is highly diverse with sections around the world, including 18 sections in Africa. And I understand there will be several more sections asking for status coming from the African continent. So please keep in mind, this is the WILPF International Congress. So there will be people from every continent and every section who will be participating in the conversation. What's really important is that the crime against humanity known as slavery was focused in on Africans. And so we're really lifting up that because this is a UN decade for people of African descent. So the workshop was accepted with that clear understanding, Judy. This is a UN decade for people of African descent. So the workshop, equity and inclusion, section by section, takes in that fact.
Okay, I understand your international focus. Thank you.
Thank you. More questions? Okay, well, this concludes the facets of the Congress that I wanted to be sure we would go over. I offer the assembled folks some choices. But first I see Robin Lloyd has a hand up, so go right ahead, Robin.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that there is a, I guess, internationally sponsored workshop on the peace train to Beijing, and we're sort of revising that and looking at it. Little bits of it will be shown. That's at 6 a.m. EST, as I understand it, on the Wednesday, the 20th. And that is, I believe it's, it's on the chart. Babsy Lockbuehler will be there, and I believe that there's going to be a WILPF woman from Ukraine and from Russia as participants on that workshop. So everyone's invited. Please come. Get up early. Those out west, you're going to have more of a job.
Darian?
Yes, I was just about to call on you, Regina.
Okay, because I pulled up the canopy list, and that Peace Train workshop is on Monday, July 18.
Really?
what-
Oh my gosh, well, thank you.
On Monday, there are 4 workshops. The first one is going to actually be midnight, Sunday night, our time. So
Which
you have
are,
to look
Wait a
at
minute.
which hour time, please?
um,
Yeah.
Pacific. I'm sorry, yeah, that's right. Not all of us are living in San Francisco. So I'm not going to tell you the start times, but if you're looking at something that starts at 9 a.m. in Europe, you're going to have to go back so many hours. In my case, it's 9 hours back. So that would put it at midnight, my time. So I'm not going to tell you the times, but when you're looking at these, you need to calculate the time and make sure you have the right day as well as time, because we're, Australia is 11 or 13 hours or something. Europe is 9 hours from the West Coast. So first workshop, Voices from the Asian Pacific, Working for Peace, Denuclearization and Demilitarization, presented by Aotearoa, Japan and Polynesia and Australia. Second one is Building an Intergenerational Movement, which is obviously collaboration between different generations of feminist peace advocates. So there's going to be a facilitated kind of discussion. Then the Peace Train to Beijing, the 4th World Conference on Women, a revealing study of solidarity in motion. Peace Train to Beijing tells the story of 230 women and 10 men from 42 countries. So the next one is Towards Environmental Peace and Justice, a space for exchange and learning. So that's ecological crisis and interlinkages with gender and peace, as seen from WILPF members' perspectives. Tuesday, there are 4 workshops: narratives and experience from I should know how to pronounce this, Aotearoa, the islands in the Pacific. In the wider Pacific, nuclearization, militarization, and climate challenges are primarily rooted in the consequences of colonialization by Northern Hemisphere powers. So that's that group. Killer Robots is the next one. We have a Killer Robots project, so that's our international staff. Next one, Illegitimacy of Nuclear Weapons in Italy, presentation of a legal study. And so that's legal resources available to prove the illegality of nuclear bombs, hosted by new NWS nuclear weapons state countries that have ratified the NPT. The 4th workshop is Ecofeminism and Anti-Militarism in WILPF's agenda. And so that's the relationship between ecofeminism and anti-militarism. On Wednesday, there are 3 workshops: Looking Back and Moving Toward, the WILPF Peace Train of Beijing to Beijing 1995. So that one is on Wednesday. So there are 2 peace train. This one is the Helsinki Peace Train. So there are 2 peace train workshops, one on Monday and one on Wednesday. Second workshop on Wednesday, Witch Feminism, a role play and reflection space. So that's about patriarchy, etc. The 3rd workshop is Building Equity and Inclusion. That is the one that Teresa just told us about. On Thursday, we have Feminist Peace Movement Challenges and Opportunities Under Taliban Regime by WILPF Afghanistan, looking at the section's work in the last 9 months under Taliban regime. Second workshop on Thursday, Building the Space for Younger WILPF Members. 3rd workshop, Towards Transformative Feminist Economies of Care. This is the draft of the next international program, establishes that WILPF wants to replace capitalism with economies that promote care and community. And WILPF's concept of a feminist peace is the world. So that one is really on our international program. Friday is the Climate Justice Workshop that we heard earlier, and one called Governance and Organizational Proposals for the Future, which doesn't have any details about it. So those are the workshops, 14 in 5 days.
And actually, I believe there may be more coming up. I got an email from Pat Hines
Mhm.
indicating some technical problems with apparently getting her workshop onto the schedule. I don't really
Mhm.
understand.
Okay, well, we should look for more then.
Yeah, check if you're registering for the Congress, it's a good idea to check that schedule of workshops regularly. So before I move away entirely from workshops, these will be during the week, and this is an unusual situation that we get as many program-related presentations as are being offered. A number of us who have been to other congresses had noted that there were fewer and almost zero issue-related content items at the congresses, which was a surprise to a lot of people. It had turned into more and more business, and then some opportunity to get to know people at social events. I would feel remiss if I did not emphasize how much this Congress is an opportunity to get together with people from other sections. The Canopy program or platform allows a number of kinds of ways to communicate with people, to set up meetings with them, and so forth. So please do, if you're going to be attending, take advantage of those. And since we're starting to lose quite a few people, thank you for everyone who has joined in and been part of this. I want to say that we can take a few more minutes for discussion. And we also have the offer that I believe Dee has put in the chat, where she's interested in screen sharing her canopy to show people what it looks like and what's available on it. And so Teresa and Odile, if you would put down your hands just for a moment, because I'm going to need you to raise them for something else. But if you can't do that, then you'll just be counted twice. I'm looking for how many people, by a show of your virtual hands, how many people are interested in seeing Dee's canopy information so that you can see what's available. So I see 1, 2, only a couple of people, 3. Okay, more hands are coming up. Okay, and let me count people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm counting real hands also. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, it looks like 7 people. And how many people would like, okay, please lower your hands. And if you are having trouble with that, I will help you. Okay, thank you. And how many people would like to first take a maximum of 10 more minutes for discussion? Please raise your hand. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we'll take a maximum of 7 more minutes for discussion, because we had twice as many people wanting to see the canopy, and it's very late in the East. So, Teresa, you had your hand up first, and other people who want to discuss, please raise your hand. Odile, I know you had wanted to discuss. Actually, Odile, if you're still here, I'm sorry.
Yes, she is.
Okay, Teresa, I wanted to put Odile first because it's like 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning where she is.
It's 4:30, and I was going to say good night, everyone. But I wanted to say that the Middle East, I had tried, I wrote for a workshop on the Middle East, and I am very sorry to say that there is not a workshop on the Middle East, and I don't know why what I sent didn't come through, or why it was not accepted. So I have no clue on this. So anyway, I am very sad about it. I think it's an important topic. and we don't have anything, and there is nothing on Ukraine specifically, and that's very sad also. Okay, I am sorry, but I'm really falling asleep. It's plus 4:30 here, so good night.
Thank
Good
you for
night.
being with us.
Night.
Good night.
Good
Bye,
night.
Odile.
Night, Odile.
Good night. A bientôt.
Bientôt.
So, Teresa, you were next on the stack, but you lowered your hand. Did you want to?
Oh, well, I lowered my hand because I thought you knew I was next on the stack.
No, but go ahead, and after you is Regina.
Well, thank you. I just want to say ditto to the significance of being in an international feminist peacemaking organization and movement, because one of the things that's happened over the past year or so, thanks to the Middle East Peace and Justice Action Committee, is getting to know Shireen. And I didn't realize she was a Middle East, North Africa regional rep until recently. So she, George, and I, and Solfrid of the Norway section are working to do a webinar that we're organizing for at some point in the future. And also the No to NATO subcommittee of disarm has made connections, thanks to Nancy and others, with people in Finway in Sweden. And I've already gotten a commitment from Tamara Lockrens of WILPF Canada. So we have plans for an October US section organized international webinar on No to NATO. So I would say get to know as many people in other sections as possible. I'm amazed at how easy it's been over the past year to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Regina, and after Regina will be Judy Adams.
I just wanted to point out a feature on the Canopy platform, and then I have to go. Canopy offers a place for you to set up small group meetings with other people that you want to talk with on like you want to chat, like you're standing in front of the water cooler or having a drink, but you can't do that in a virtual setting. So go to the availability tab and block out the times that you will be available to meet with others. That makes that easier for people to set up meetings, or if somebody sees you and wants to chat with you, they can look at your schedule and find out if you're available at a certain time, and then they can propose a meeting when you can actually meet with them. Or if the delegates and us, the people who are attending the Congress, if we decide we want to meet for some reason, this is the how you can get a meeting set up easily on the platform. And the other alternative, of course, would be there are something like 20 people on this call, is just to create an email list and of those people. I don't know who they are because I didn't write their names down or their email addresses, but just send out an email and chat that way if you can't do it on the platform. If there's some urgent issue that comes up at Congress that we want to talk about, those of us who are on this call may be interested in knowing about it. And I want to thank Darian for being very responsive. I've had a lot on your plate, but I really appreciate that you took this up and held this meeting tonight. I think that people got a lot of benefit out of it, and perhaps we've convinced a few people to sign up and attend, and certainly maybe established a greater interest and connection to this new international 3-year program that we're going to be adopting. So I want to thank you very much.
Well, and thanks to you also, Regina. This meeting is because of you. Okay, I'm calling on Judy, then
Good
Cindy,
evening.
then Nancy, and then we're going to shift over to viewing the Canopy platform. So Judy.
Yes, I wanted to thank everyone who's made comments, Odile and Teresa, and our last commentator, whose name has slipped my brain. I want to say that I put the link to, if you want to do an independent study of how the canopy works, it's at 552 position. It also appears a little bit later in the chat. It's very useful, and there's so many features. So be sure that you either do it yourself or stay on for a guided tour. Thanks everyone, especially Darian.
Thank you. And Nancy.
So I just wanted to ask, would it be possible when you're viewing through Canopy a panel or workshop or presentation that you could record that, or there's some way that we could have our own recordings that we could play